had a birthday not too long ago, a couple days ago, I think.
Yeah.
And I actually used my prize to go visit Jan in Wales, and it was just so wonderful. So that was great. To Jan. So, you know, the feeling is mutual in terms of the emotion that I feel and the love I feel towards book passage, toward Elaine and Bill. Thank you guys so much. It did all start with the Travel Writers Conference in terms of prose for me, and I keep coming back here. They've been a champion for me for all of my books, and for so many people, as you all know. And it's just been a blessing to be part of this community. I also want to thank my writing community. It is all about community for me. And everyone here, thank you all for coming. I think some of the people who actually endorsed my book, is Becky here? Larry's here, right?
Yeah, Larry's right here.
Larry! I can't see out there. Yay, thank you, Larry, for coming. I mean, so many people were so supportive in when the book was coming out, because you know that's a difficult time when you don't know if the book's going to work or not. So, and my publisher was absolutely amazing. When they approached me to do this third book in their series, I was so excited. The two other writers that had come before me, one of them is a poet mainly, but she does other work as well in other genres. She writes plays, Grace Cavalieri, who's now the Poet Laureate of Maryland, and Richard Peabody, who's famous for the magazine Gargoyle. This is a collection of already published work, which all of you writers know that's a wonderful thing, because you don't have to write it. It's already done. So they wanted long and short fiction and creative nonfiction, and they wanted poetry. And I wanted to create a book that crossed genres, cultures, points of view. I wanted a light and dark, insider, outsider kind of thing going on, because I really believe in that. And my life is a lot about that. And I was able to do that with this book, and I was really pleased to be able to do it. It's dedicated to to Lowry McFerrin, my husband. My kind co-pilot. Yeah. But sometimes he's not so kind a co-pilot. In this, you know, it's for the book. And I want to also thank, it was a huge task organizing all of this. And I had a wonderful editor, and in Joanna Bigger. Joanna, are you here? Okay. I was hoping she would come tonight. She had to read through all of the work in all of my work, and help select which pieces were going to go into the book and how it's going to be organized. And the thing about it is that Joanna and I have traveled together, and we have edited together, and she's also a poet and a novelist and a journalist. So we have a lot of similarities, and I couldn't have had a better person to work with on that. So I got to pick the person, and that was really exciting as well. The book is organized into 4 sections. The first one is Love, a Refuge. The second is Back to Asia. The third is Death and Shadow, and the fourth is Beyond the Edge. And the concept is that it would move like, the narrative arc would be almost like a poetry book, and quite musical in a way, so there's an emotional arc through the book. So what I'm going to try to do in this book, in the reading tonight, is read pieces from each of those sections, so that to kind of give you a feel for how the book unfolds. Of course you can read it any way you want, but I wanted to kind of give an emotional arc to you all. So hopefully so I'm going to read for a while and then open it up for questions. How's that sound, guys?
Great.
Okay. All right. So first a little bit about the genesis of the book. And I'm not going to talk, I'm just going to read. So this begins the genesis of how all of my writing. It's the introduction, author's introduction, one door closes. Put me last. Call it the caboose. The final car in a train that you don't want to miss. Maybe you've run just fast enough to catch up with it and hop aboard as the train pulls out of the station. You grab the end ladder, the one behind the back wheels, and then you're on it, but just barely. It was like that when I joined the Berkeley Poets Cooperative. I was on the last car. I'd missed the wild and crazy 60s, the 70s, what I thought must have been the cool Telegraph Avenue street poetry days. They were history. The year was 1984, and I'm well aware of how fortunate I was to catch the tail end of the co-op's incredible ride. Did I mention that I was a zombie at the time? I knew that had come in. Well, at least that is when I began writing about them. I was wandering through the post-apocalyptic ruin of my still young life, having lost my newborn daughter. The only thing standing between the absolute end and me was some volunteer work I was doing for the Hunger Project and a blank book that my husband had wisely given me. My grandfather was a Welsh journalist in pre-war Shanghai. My aunt was a screenwriter. One of my uncles was an American war correspondent, and my mother would have liked to have been a poet, or maybe a novelist, but she didn't have her hands full with 4 children, whom she seemed to like a lot more than her writing. I was encouraged to write, and I loved doing it, but only for school or for pleasure. In 1984, it had become something more than that. The pages of that blank book would become an empty wasteland I would first puzzle over, then use as the space to create a map back. I'm not sure what provoked me to call up the people who organized the Berkeley Poets Cooperative. I can see why the co-op thrived. Oh, every week I would bring some horrid little poem to that meeting. No wonder I wanted to skip that. And the other poets would chop it to bits. I'm sure you guys have experienced this kind of thing. I liked that. It suited my frame of mind. I learned to ignore the less than pleasant people in the room, and I did overcome my fear of the Bruces, Hawkins, and Boston, longtime members, whom I found both brilliant and intimidating. Poem. Fireflies After Thunder, for Lowry. Fireflies after thunder, lights winking on as if life scattered kisses, dandelion light, into the dark cloud damp. And they've stuck there, on a flypaper of shadow, on a moment that like a shade drawn, counts itself down. And the moisture rises up, the hands heal, pressing into my cranium. Fireflies follow, their flickering lights, hatchlings, the contagion, touch of life and death that I now carry inside me. I can see why the co-op thrived for all those years. In general, the sessions were thrilling, full of risk and dread and elation. Charles and Gail were the perfect hosts. Charles is a fantastic editor. Any of us could volunteer to work with him on the BPC, W&P anthologies, which I did. I sometimes think of that first experience after all these years of editing books. Charles is a genius. Everyone was opinionated, not a lesson was wasted. In 1990, the Berkeley Poets Workshop and Press published 2 chapbooks, The Reason for Nasturtiums by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, and my first book, The Impossibility of Redemption, is something we hadn't figured on. The last to come out from the co-op before Gail and Charles moved north to Nevada City. I switched shortly thereafter to prose, both fiction and nonfiction. I wrote for newspapers and magazines for years. It turns out the last car of the train is as good as any on a trip like this one. I tell that to all my students these days. Last car or first, take a chance, run for it, jump aboard. The journey regretted is always the one not taken. So that's sort of sign up for those things that you're kind of on the fence about. So from love, a refuge, sometimes the slant of sunlight on the hills. Sometimes the slant of sunlight on the hills is here, the new light fingering its way into a darkened chamber, into sleep. Crisp morning, licking at the pillowcases and the sheets to drive us out. Our bodies, calipers, curled drowsily toward one another, flame red, twin tulip petals tipped in scarlet. In that refraction, our kisses multiple and so inflected that the sun comes riding into our plain souls, suffusing us. And this also from Love of Refuge. This is, and also from Back to Asia. This is a novel excerpt from Namako. The title of the section is Yuki, Snow. Bad things come in threes. That is what Sarah always said, and that is exactly what happened. I was grounded. Mr. Graham was dismissed, but I didn't think about Sarah's old saying. That's why I didn't even anticipate the third thing, didn't know it was forming while I brooded that day. I didn't suspect it when the small stones chipped at my window at night in the last hours of the last day of my punishment. It must have been close to midnight. Mimi was fast asleep in her bed, snoring fuzzily into her pillow. The first little stone hit the window with a click. It could have been the wind. It could have been icicles breaking or snow melting and falling from the eaves. Then the next few little stones hit the window, one after the other. Tick, tick, tick. A simple code, methodically tapping out a message to come to the window. It continued until I couldn't ignore it. I tiptoed through the dark room and pulled back the curtain. What I saw made me catch my breath. The moonlight from the fingernail sliver of moon had cast all the snow in a pale blue moonscape against the black of the sky. It was so entrancing that I was completely taken off guard when David Vintner's face appeared at the window. I watched his mouth shape the words theatrically on the other side of the glass. Open the window, he whined. I opened it quickly. The cold air rushed in. David put his face close to mine and whispered into my ear, Ellen, Ellen, get dressed and come out. I have something important to tell you. You're crazy, I said, thinking, what a lunatic. Not trusting, fear catching in my voice. I'm grounded. It's nearly midnight. It's freezing out there. No, it's not, he laughed, moving away from the window and spinning around, face turned toward the heavens. It's wonderful. Come on, Ellen. He rushed back to the window. Please, I have something very important to tell you. I think it was the tone of his voice, the brightness of his eyes, the way his narrow, white face seemed to be blue, hard, and glittery like the moonlit snow. Maybe it was the week of being confined or the cold pulling up around the sash and the clean smell of night stealing into the room. Okay, I heard myself saying. Just wait right there and I'll be out. I dressed carefully, not wanting the cold to lay an icy grip on me, finding ways to lock in the stored warmth of bed and blanket. I tiptoed through the house while everyone slept, wrapped like dreamy chrysalises in their cocoons of warmth. But as soon as I opened the front door, the chill reached in and slapped me, a hand to each cheek. The blood rushed in with the warmth, staining them. I imagined a very bright red. Then it entered my mouth, filling my lungs with icy splinters of cold, and the heat escaped in a fine steam from my nostrils and lips. David, I said as the steamy breath gushed out, are you nuts? David's eyes were bright. They caught the moonlight. He was very excited. Ellen, he whispered, grabbing my hands, I came to say goodbye. I'm leaving. The words sat outside my mind and waited patiently for me to give them the command to enter. But I couldn't let them. Something about them was too much. I chose to focus on something else to distract me. David, you have gloves, I said, noticing that my own gloved hands were surrounded by his leather-clad ones. Yeah, he said proudly, nice, from Tad. That's what I wanted to tell you about. David was pulling on me. We waded through the snow-covered yard toward the back of the house, through the rickety white picket gate, propped open for the season by a drift of snow. The baseball field had become a winter amusement park where the trampled snow formed paths that circled and ended in snowmen. Melting stockpiles of snowballs that the boys had amassed had turned to ice. The ruined shell of Beanie's igloo hunched in the center of the field. I was complaining bitterly. Look, David, this is crazy. It's freezing out here. The hem of my nightgown, which stuck out from under my coat and below the line of my boots, was soaked through. I had on a hood, but the wind wormed its way through the outer layer of my clothing and now had its icy hands on my body. Yeah, but it'll be warm here, David said, pulling me down with him against the unbroken half shell of the igloo. See? David put his arms around me. Then he said with a drunken grin on his face, "Isn't that better?" I nodded, shocked out of my mind, surprised to be sitting there in the shell of an igloo with this dangerous, beautiful boy with his arms around me. What if you were marooned on the moon at midnight in the arms of David Vintner? I asked myself, supplying the opening line to that favorite game that had somehow found its way into the real world. I was brilliantly happy, but at the same time horrified, sensing that something was terribly wrong. Tad, David continued his story. Tad, this guy, he's my friend. He's been helping me out, spending time with me. Ellen, he knows my dad too. Says he knew him 15 years ago, met him in school. David, do you mean he knows where your dad is? I asked, suddenly thinking I'd made sense out of the bits of information David was sharing. Well, no, not exactly, David stammered. But I'll find that out later. What's important is this. Tad's in Tokyo now, and that's where I'm going. I'm leaving, Ellen. I'm going to find Tad. He'll let me stay with him, and then who knows? Maybe we'll hang out together for a while. Maybe I'll find my dad. What about your mother? What about Claire, I thought. I was glad those words did not come out of my mouth. There was no place for them in the igloo. They would have melted away the moonscape around us, destroying the thin bridge of ice that now, for the moment, joined David and me. Instead, I said, I'm going to miss you, David. David's grip tightened around me. Bloated by our layers of clothing, we clung to one another like a couple of ticks. I'll miss you too, Ellen, he said gently, his eyes bright, exploring my face, resting on my mouth. Then his mouth was on mine, and I felt his sorrow, the sobs that I wouldn't hear this time, entering my mouth and falling into my throat. I closed my eyes, and we were spinning around and around, giddy music box dancers under the revolving constellations. I caught my breath. He took off his gloves, put his warm hands on my cheeks, and squeezed my face. He squeezed so hard that tears came to my eyes. I felt a couple of errant drops start from the inner corners. All this shit about growing up, David said to those teardrops. It's hard, isn't it? No, it's worse. It's perpetually fucked. I hate being a kid. It's the worst part of life. You'll be fine, Ellen. You're pretty tough. You've got Sarah and you've got Jean. They're pretty good parents. Well, at least they care. But what about you, David, I asked, talking from the pinched shape of my mouth, not at all discomforted by it, wondering when he'd let go of my face. I must have looked funny talking out of a pinched mouth like that. Oh, sorry, he said, releasing his grip. Me? I'll be fine too. Better than here. They're killing me here, Ellen. I just have to go. My mom, he laughed, she's used to guys running off on her. And Claire? Well, you know she's much better without me around. I'll tell you who I'm going to really miss, though. I'm going to miss you and your family. I wish I were one of you. That would be nice. Okay, so marry me, I wanted to say. We'll grow up together and marry, and neither of us will ever be lonely again. But David, teeth chattering, was already struggling to his feet, replacing his gloves, brushing the snow from his jeans. He stretched out a hand and pulled me up next to him. I wish I were older, he said. Me too, I replied. Then David hauled back and with one banshee whoop, kicked down the last side of the igloo. Also from Back to Asia, one of the poems. The Dojo, Lesson 1. Just beyond her reach, the movement hung, precise as a kanji character, as meticulous in execution. Every day she labored toward it, arms reaching, traced its reflection. Sometimes she'd touch a lower corner. She could fly. The movement when she caught it, effortless. The instructor muttered, "Higher." The redness in her face betrayed wrong thinking. Her desire only made her thirsty. This one is from Death and Shadow, the section Death and Shadow.
Linda, can you speak up a little louder?
Oh, sure. Is it hard to hear me?
Right.
Okay, sorry.
Towards you.
In Vatican, from Death and Shadow. This is a travel essay. And I'm going to read little bits of it. My first trip to Greece was years ago with my husband Lawrence. Larry gets to be called Lawrence in all these stories to protect his identity, which is not protected. It was a very slim protection. We were and some of these stories are quite risque, so poor Lawrence, poor whoever he might be. We were traveling around Europe after the death of our newborn daughter, Marissa, our only child. We came towing regret, weighted with sorrow. We came running. Germany, France, we tried to escape the bitter specter of Marissa's mortality and ours. But the world as we saw it was grainy and gray, like an old film, run way too many times. In Athens, Connie and her husband Wayne helped heal us, their care and their friendship like a pair of hands lifting us up. The small chapel of St. George at the top of Lycabettos Hill, the towering Acropolis, on those Athenian summits, the penetrating, life-affirming light of Greece found its way around and into me. In that cauldron, the damp stranglehold of death and tears and incessant mourning was burned away. There were subsequent trips to Greece, to Midori with the poet and friend Nanos Valeritis, to Neapoli, to Crete with the Knossos Moscholaris. Come, he told us, his massive carnelian ring flashing as he took a deep drag from his Dunhill cigarette. I'll prepare an island for you. Then a long hiatus. My feet. The water laps up and touches my feet on the rocky beach in Agia Ilia. And I'm thinking of Iphigenia. The water, which is jazz blue, slaps the shore with a gentle smack, smack, smack. From my shady spot beneath the cowl of rock, I watch the women splashing about in it, breasts bobbing upon the cobalt surface. We had just dined on calamari at the small taverna above the beach. Calamari, tzatziki, Greek salad, eggplant salad, spanakopita. The meals are invariably similar, consistently delicious. Laughter bubbles up from the bodies playing on the surf. Crab-like, I angled back toward the rock, protecting myself from the sun. I continue to puzzle over Iphigenia, whose story I chose to tell last night as we shared our favorite myths. I can't imagine why I chose this particular myth. Iphigenia, the ill-fated daughter of King Agamemnon and his queen Clytemnestra, was sacrificed to Aeolus so that the winds would blow, so that the Greek fleet could set forth to conquer Troy. It always struck me as so very sad that this poor child, she was a maiden, a chore, would become the sacrifice. In one version of the story, Euripides' play, I think, she's carried away by the wind. Yes, of course there'd be a wind here. Carried off to the Black Sea, where she is safe for a while. In your bark beside the sleepy sea, close your eyes, my darling, wait for me. There was a wind to carry Marissa off, wasn't there? I like that version of the myth. Iphigenia. The name haunts me. The women here talk about their daughters. Mary Jean's daughter is a poet and a dancer. Gail's daughter dances as well. She'll be off to a new college this fall. Barbara's daughter, Piper, has just visited Neapoli. Together they hiked to paradise. Doreen has a beautiful little granddaughter whose name is Kayla, a very wise little girl, according to Doreen, who gives her so much pleasure. Linda Ju's two adopted daughters are from China. She shares their photos and details about their likes and dislikes. They have silky black hair and beautiful cheeks full of roses. I listen to these stories like an impoverished ghost. My girl is an invisible presence who sits silently beside me, follows me wherever I go. I could point her out, share her with others. I wish I could point her out, share her with others. I am ashamed of my empty arms. In Faracalo, a small village nestled high up in the hills around Neapoli, where we are hiking one morning, Barbara shares what she knows about the Greek concept of sorio, the ancestral village. It is the place from which one's family hails, the root, the heart of a lineage, and the place to which future generations often return. I have one I know somewhere in Japan. I have not been back, but my brothers and my sister went there once as children with my mother a few years before my younger brother Paul drowned in the cold waters of the Trinity Alps. I have an ancestral village in Italy as well, and one in Wales, where my grandfather was born. I've been to Japan, to Italy, and to Wales, but always as a wanderer, a person without a home. And I have not visited these family fonts. I wonder about them in a vague way, but I cannot bring myself to go. Perhaps one day I will. I don't know. I realize that it is not the familiar that draws me. I feel loose and rootless, roaming and meandering, in Odysseus of sorts, trying to find my Ithaca. Gaddafi says Ithaca, the home base we seek, is ultimately within us, and that it is the search for Ithaca that inspires our travels. Have Ithaca always in your mind. To arrive there is what you are destined for, but do not in the least hurry the journey. Once or twice I thought I had found it, Ithaca. Sometimes for a little while I find shelter in some imaginary cove like here in Vatica, but then I am off again. There was a time when I believed there was a place where I could settle. Ithaca gave you the beautiful voyage. Without her, you would never set out. But it's different now. I'm on my own, my daughter is gone, and there is nothing left but for the winds to blow. So, moving from that. Oh, you can't hear me? Can you guys not hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to read one more and then open it up for questions. So that one was from Death and Shadow, and I'm not going to give you any more Death and Shadow. You know, there's plenty of it in this book. So then, moving right along. Hi, Joanna. I mentioned you. Joanna's a book coming out too. She's a wonderful novelist. Okay, so now we're in the last section, which is my favorite section because I get really surreal in this section, which is really fun because a lot of this section is actually nonfiction, but it is so crazy. So this is one of the pieces. This is a travel essay on the San Joaquin, and you should read this whole section first if you get the book because it's like so. Oh, so you might want to save it. Anyway, so this was, all these pieces were published in regular newspapers, journalists, journals, and though we don't have them anymore, boo-hoo, that was a good time. And they had little pictures around them and everything. It was great. And this one was in the Examiner Chronicle magazine. It's called On the San Joaquin Travel Essay. You look lonely. The waiter stops at my table, leans across it. I'm sipping a Bloody Mary in the dining car of the San Joaquin, a train that runs daily from San Francisco to Bakersfield and back. I'm on my way home to Oakland. He puts his hand on my arm. I realize at that point, sunlight insinuating through the scratch window of the train, that loneliness is a feeling I'm comfortable with, like an old bathrobe, one that's not particularly attractive. It's a feeling I've worn so long that I don it with the greatest of comfort, sometimes unaware of the fact that it's not the correct dress for dinner and social interaction. That it's not really appropriate for any company or any place outside the home. Yes, I think, at this moment I am lonely, but only for this moment. and certainly not as lonely as Iggy. Iggy is the iguana that bit me earlier in the day. Iggy has become so lonely that he cannot be handled. He is 7 years old and has spent all 7 of those years in a 36 by 12-inch glass case. Iggy is angry, and he'll bite any hand that comes near him. I imagine myself biting the waiter who has just put his hand on my hand. Outside the train window, the sun is setting like an egg yolk on the edge of a bowl. The windows look like they have glue smeared on them. Twilight filters through the panes in an irregular fashion. Iggy belongs to my niece and nephew. He sleeps in his glass case at the foot of Eileen's bed. She can watch him as she lies there with her head on the pillow. Iggy is a fabulous green color. He has beautiful, long, curved claws. And although my niece and nephew claim he has none, he has a set of cartilaginous teeth that they can imprint like a small choker upon contact with skin. A 1-inch circle of flesh wounds beaded with blood. Iggy has no mate. He has soft little spines all around his back, a beautiful neck that puffs out and puffs in, and a habit of poking his head directly under the sun lamp to soak up the heat. I have a mate, and I love him dearly. I have long dark hair and skin that's beginning to age. I'm exceedingly fond of sunshine, although I'm aware that it greatly accelerates the aging process. Darkness is falling, and the chatter of the dinner car gets louder. I love the dusky mood of the place, white tablecloths, lamplight. There are a lot of foreign travelers on the train. Europeans, people from other countries, enjoy train travel. You always find them in the dining cars. They know that's the best place to be. According to my nephew Peter, I am supposed to turn into an iguana. I have only a few days left. Then my face will begin to point, a tough, scaly skin will start to form over my body, and I will turn green. As a matter of fact, my finger is throbbing. It's swollen. The veins on the back of my hand stand out as if overtaxed, straining to convey the iguana enzymes to other parts of my body. Maybe it's my imagination, or just a coincidental discomfort. I cough, and a sticky tobacco-like substance comes out of my mouth. A syrup-like trickle escapes from my nose. I'm freezing. I put on my jacket. I'm still cold. When I become an iguana, I will be a giant iguana. I will not be able to take the train anymore. I will need to get away. There's really nowhere for a 5'2" iguana to go. I don't think there's a glass case big enough. Iguanas live for a very long time. I don't know how long Iggy will live. I think he will just get crazier and crazier. One day maybe he'll run off. Where can an iguana run? I will book a ticket to Mexico, or rent a car while I still can, and hide out in the Sonoran Desert. I'll become a legend, the giant iguana of the Sonoran Desert, like Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. I'm feeling green, very green, and very alien in spite of the Bloody Mary, in spite of the salmon dinner and the incessant questions of the woman sitting at the table across the aisle from me. Do you know when we'll be in Modesto, she asks. Unlike the European traveler, she seems ill at ease on the train. At 7:30, I think, I try to sound charitable. Here, have a look at the timetable, I add, handing it over to her. I notice that my fingernails look like claws. The skin on my hands looks scaly. In the lamplight, they appear to be almost chartreuse. All of the Europeans are smiling. I believe they are aware of my dilemma. I miss my mate. The waiter is bustling about my table. He's very solicitous. He brings me dessert. He brings me coffee. He finally brings me the bill. Phew, he says. He usually doesn't get this busy until summer. I hope I haven't neglected you. He brings back my credit card, asks for my signature. Once again, he puts his hand on my arm. Things get hazy then. I am no longer responsible. Iggy, he says, with an understanding smile, looking at my receipt, at the place where I've signed for the meal. I'm gazing out into the darkness, feeling terribly lonely, not minding at all. Iggy McFerrin, you've been very patient. Thank you. You've all been very patient. So those are just some little bits from the book, and there is a lot of poetry in it. I want to ask, does anybody have any questions? I mean, does this provoke any more poetry? I'll read another poem. Let me find a poem that I think I might. Oh, this one's kind of my, this one's not a happy poem. Because I do write a few unhappy things. It's called Freight Train. The freight train moans toward the docks just as I cry, working my way into my metal future. There is no door in the bright sky from which God descends on a cloud of steam. But there is an ocean close by. It creaks with ships. On my black track, I clatter toward oblivion, find solace in the vast wings of the albatross. That was kind of metaphysical. And I'm going to read one more, because I think this one you guys will love. It fits in with the travel theme, and it's, I know Joanna likes it too. It's called The House. And some of you may relate to this. The house. This is a warning. Do not own the house. You may become it. You may become dark as the stairwell, or cramped as the basement garage. You may love the sunroom too dearly. A hole in the roof could cause overwhelming despair. The faint odor of mold disturbing your dreams. You might collect mice, voracious squirrels, relatives. If your family had homes, being sufficiently created by them, live in rented rooms. Look for high ceilings, avoid carpeting, allow no window coverings. If you must own a house, do not live in it. If all else fails, travel often. I know some of you are going to relate to that. Yes, RC.
I would ask the question because Iggy may not be real. I wonder if he's still alive.
Oh, I'm sure he's dead by now.
Oh, no.
My niece has moved a long time ago and grown up, and Iggy, along with a long list of other reptiles, are hard to keep as pets for some people. I used to visit the East Bay Vivarium. I even wrote about it. Of course, I write about everything. I would write about everything that was interesting to me, and reptiles were interesting to me. And people don't like to keep them. They get them, and then they often don't keep them very long. So sad for that iguana, probably, poor Iggy. Maybe they released him. Maybe he's in the Sonoran Desert. I like to think. Other questions? Yes.
Was the iguana piece real travel? I mean, where did you, I love that. Where did you publish
It was in the travel, they did a travel special, and you know, the thing about it is it's such an unusual piece,
Yeah.
so it balances out some of the pieces that are more traditional.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I used to write very unusual pieces, and you know, it's an acquired taste, but some of my editors acquired it. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, because you have different pieces that were written at different times, if you see in them your own evolution or change as a writer throughout those pieces.
Oh, that's really, Maxine is actually going to be speaking with Left Coast Writers, right?
Yes.
You have a new book coming out.
Monday night.
Monday night, yeah. So come to that, guys. So Yeah, I think I changed as a writer. As what happens is you become a little bit more confident in what you can do, and I push the boundaries more and more with my work. So I would say that some of it got a lot more surreal, and I found that I could actually write honestly about something and use a point of view that was very personal. So through a personal lens, I could write a story that normally would be just a story about being on the San Joaquin. So yeah, I think it changed a lot. I think as a novelist, I've become a better novelist too. I've learned so much about. And then when you're writing in different genres, which some of you know, you start to begin to piece things from poetry into your short nonfiction, into your novel, and then your nonfiction becomes so much more dramatic because you're used to writing novels and short stories. And it's really an exciting process. I like cross-genre work, and my workshops are generally cross-genre, where people will all come writing different kinds of things, and you learn from all those different, the different styles, which is really exciting. It's a good question, Maxine. Is that,
You want it?
Yeah.
I have a serious question, but then I think the thing that everyone wants to know that you didn't answer is, were you able to find a serum to undo the lizard?
No, on really sunny days.
Okay. And my other question is, what was the biggest surprise as you brought all of this together?
The biggest surprise? Well, first of all, the biggest surprise was, and Joanna might feel the same way, was how much there was to wade through. I mean, there was just so much I could just do another book. I mean, there was just so much to pick from. And I hadn't really realized that I'd written all that much, because you're just writing and writing and writing, and you don't look at you. It's not often that we get a chance to look at our body of work, and that was a real surprise. And then that's just the stuff that was published. Lordy, the stuff that nobody wanted, there's a whole pile of that too. So that was the biggest surprise. Yeah.
So Linda, you've traveled so much and shared so much of your travel writing. What are some of the most inspiring places that you've traveled as it relates to your writing?
Okay, so for me,
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, what are the most inspiring places that I've traveled to in regarding the writing? Well, so I would say Japan, of course, because I love Japan, and Asia. But with Joanna, we've been doing this Wanderland Writers thing for all these years, and that's such a treat, because we get to pick the place. We recently went to Cuba, and that was amazing. It was just mind-blowing. Then we went back to Greece, because Greece is always inspiring. And we're going, it's almost the next place that you haven't gone yet. We're going to Namibia next year. We're taking a group to Namibia. So I'm sure, everything from, I don't know, it's going to be really amazing with the dunes and everything. Just an amazing trip. So I'm really excited about that. I guess places that are really different from the places that we normally walk around, places that have often some discomfort. Those places are inspiring to me. It's interesting to see how other people live, and to be able to live as much as you can in that way. Bali was inspiring. Spiritual places are inspiring too. God, everything's inspiring. I mean, Oakland is inspiring. I love Oakland, so yeah. I don't know, I didn't really pick a place, did I? I sort of love them all.
I said so.
Yeah, Maureen, I like them all. You can always find something in a place that's special. And that's the job, right? That's the thing, is to find, and also in people. What is that special trait that makes this place, this person different from anyone else? Because, places have a character, just like people. Yeah, Nancy, hi.
Hi. When I first met you, you kept injuring yourself. Have you written much about that in relation?
The injuries? I don't think I've written enough about it. I mean, I wanted to do a piece. There's so many pieces you sort of know that you want to write. I wanted to do a story. Everybody gets these tattoos and everything, and I have scars. So I was like, I have my own form of tattoos. I wanted to write a piece about metal parts and how wonderful it is to have metal parts. But yeah, I haven't written about my injuries that much. It would be fun to though, because most of them are like shockingly stupid injuries that only happen to people who aren't paying attention. Like, I'm far away from the edge here, but that is a possible injury. Anyone else? Yes.
Linda,
Jerry.
how many years would you say this book spans in your life? The youngest story in the book and the oldest. How many
Oh,
years would you
God,
say?
that would give away my age, wouldn't it? And that's okay. Let's see. It's a math problem, Terry, and I'm really bad at math. I'd say probably about 30 years. And I can't, don't quote me on that because, again, it is a math problem and I'm not great at math, but probably around 30 years. I mean, strung out, the body of work we looked at was about 30 years worth of work. Why?
It just all sounds so mature, and I was wondering if that was something that you maybe a 5-year span in recent history, or...
I was a really mature little kid. I just want to tell you guys a story really quickly. My mom, when I was a kid, was so like lackadaisical. This was back in the days, and she would just like send. I took a bus, a public bus, to nursery school. She would, she gave me the address. I was on a public bus. I was tiny, and I just remember the big velvet seats behind me. And sometimes I'd ride the bus all the way to the end of the line because I didn't know, I'd fall asleep or something, I didn't know. And the bus driver always would, he'd call, I had, my address and everything, or my number, and I'd get home. So I just think that, I've been taking weird journeys and writing about them for a long, long time. Yeah, really irresponsible. But good in a way. Yeah.
Talking about injuries, and thank you for blessing my broken foot.
Oh, you're welcome, Diana. I have so much power.
But question about zombies. I never really understood your interest in zombies. Can you explain that?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So there is actually, I believe, zombies are, well, I'm interested in vampires too, I should let you know. And there are two different sides. The vampire is the ego, the person who, like so many stars and famous people, that, they want to live forever. They will drink anybody's blood to live forever. They kill all these people. The zombie is just the opposite. The zombie really represents the proletariat. And if anybody saw that first Night of the Living Dead, you know that this man escapes, this black man, and this was back in the 60s, I guess, escapes the whole zombie apocalypse. He walks out, he's with a white woman in the house. He walks out and these sheriffs with their dogs say, "There's one," and they kill him, and it ends with his death. The zombie is really, he's every man. He's the person who doesn't have power. So zombies represent the person who goes to work every day, and their life is zombie-like. That's why I think zombie literature is often super popular in metropolitan areas where you have a large proletariat. I just think that they're very different from vampires. I sympathize with them. I went on so many zombie walks after I wrote that book, and they were so much fun because it doesn't matter how you show up dressed. You look great. Nobody cares. They love you. They absorb you. They like you no matter what. The worse you can look terrible and you're fine.
Where are the zombie walks?
Where are they?
Yeah.
Everywhere. Look it up. They have them in Paris. They have them in Australia. They have them in the Central Valley. I did one. I'm going to D.C. for this book next week. And when I was in D.C. last, they had one in Silver Springs when my book came out, and so I did a zombie walk there. And I took all these great pictures of people with like zombie stuff on. But they're fun. You just walk. That's all you do. You walk. You look terrible and you walk, and it's a great time. They're huge. They have masses of people going. It's just so much fun. Anyway, that's what a zombie is. I can talk about zombie. I can give a whole lecture on zombies, and I have, but I'm not going to tonight. Yeah. Oh, Michelle. Hi.
Can you tell me, did you go back and edit any of your work for this, or did you just, was it published how it was written originally?
Oh, it's the way it was written originally. We did take our scissors to it and snip it up so that it would fit into the book, because there was a lot of...
No, I'm sorry. I just making it easier for you to see people.
So we did sort of snip parts of it up and you know, so because we couldn't do any long pieces or anything, so we sort of chopped it up and fit it into different things. But they were I had this amazing copy editor at so since it was all already published, that's the other thing. You didn't have to do any work. I mean, it was already, you know, the way it looked. But the copy editor for Allen Squire, God bless, they are the best publishing company. Her name is Nita Congress, and she would find things that were amazing. I will give you an example. So in one, I'm in England, and I met this guy, Jeffrey, and you never ask a person how to spell their name. So I wrote about Jeffrey, Jeffrey, and she comes back to me and she says, but it's England. Wouldn't it be Geoff? And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I said, but I didn't know, so just keep it as Jeffrey. But she would catch every little tiny thing, and there were some, but I could argue with her on them. I could say, you know, no, that's how I want it to be. But there weren't, you know, it was really easy because it had already been. But whenever I send something, whenever I write something, my fellow writers read it. I read it out loud. I read it to my best editor, who's the most critical person that I can think of, and that's my husband. and I have him read it to me, because when you read it to yourself, you don't hear the mistakes, but when he makes a mistake, I'll go, did I write that? If he reads something and it's wrong, I can notice it right away. So, yeah.
You know, just, the poem by, is it Baudelaire about the coup d'un manqueur, coming coup d'un manqueur? And they you translated that.
That's not Baudelaire. That's
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember.
French poet.
And I translated it weirdly.
Yeah, as core and something.
I know. I did that on purpose.
I was going to ask you.
Cœur is heart, but I didn't want to do it heart because for me it was the core. I cry in my core.
Right.
So I purposefully translated it
I almost
with core
emailed you
instead of cœur.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to do my own version. I'm a follower of Ezra Pound's style, which is you reinvent it when you do it. It was not supposed to be an exact translation.
But then
It's
I
how
looked up
feel.
in the French-English dictionary, and one of the translations of core is I heart is core.
It just felt like it should be, I cry in my core.
Yeah.
Where? Oh, Adrienne!
So, you know how I worry about everybody. I just think it would be really great if you wrote a sequel to Iggy where you do take him into the Sonoran Desert.
Yeah, a great novel.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great?
Oh, you want me to save Iggy?
Of course. No, it should have free Iggy.
Free Iggy.
Yeah. And I just wondered if you had written about being in kindergarten and being sent on the bus all by yourself.
I'll write something, just a couple of lines for you so you can feel better.
I just think that would be a great thing to write about. It's fascinating. I think.
About
free. Being on
What does happen to all those iguanas and those, I did write a piece on exotic pets and how terrible it is to actually
a little
have them.
They go to Florida.
But number two, I think
And
you
live
should,
they live in the water.
I think you should write about being that little teeny kid riding the bus, because that's just fascinating. That's a great, weird, personal essay.
Oh, I have so many.
I just think
If you read this book, there's some really weird poems. There's one, Sakura no Sono, where my mom, it's a really powerful poem. My mom would tell us a story about when she was in Japan, and she was in her uncle's cherry orchard. They had a cherry orchard nearby, and she was running, and they were bombing. I should read. Can I read the poem?
Yes, yes.
This is a story my mother told us as kids, and you'll go, oh my God. But it became a poem, so that was a good thing. She was, it was okay as long as stuff turned into art. It's actually good to have a weird upbringing if you want to be a writer. Okay, so this is Sakura no Sono, which means the cherry orchard. It was early spring in your uncle's cherry orchard, blossoms pink. The last time you were there, you wore high heels for the first time, just 16. This time, you were running. The raw coal drawn in with every breath, a knife blade driving deep into your chest, nose bleeding from the effort, you tasted salt. And all around you, the cherry orchard was ablaze, a maze of black trunk trees like torches dipped in rags and oil and lit. American bombers whined overhead, fat insects swarming. Your arms like skinny leather wings cranked at your sides. You ran earth-tethered, knees shaking, and you saw the man beside you running headless 30 yards before he fell as you were running on and on toward an invisible finish line. And the branches of the cherry trees were lit with flames. The sparks, petals of fire, carried on the wind.
Oh my God.
So,
that's amazing.
it's the kind of thing Mom shares.